envelopes and the sling.
Call this meeting to order at 7:03 p.m. It's a regular meeting of the governing body of the Borough of Bloomingdale, Tuesday, September 24th, 2013. I'd ask everyone to please rise to salute our nation's flag, and I would ask that everyone please remain standing for a moment of silence. The borough lost a good friend. The borough lost a gentleman who served our community as a volunteer firefighter for many, many years, and that's with the passing of Bob Kochka. And I'd ask you to, again, remain standing for a moment of silence in his honor. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. May God bless Bob and his family. Roll call, please.
Mayor Dunleavy.
Here.
Councilmembers D'Amato.
Here.
Shortman. Here. Conklin.
Here.
Gallagher.
Here.
Sondemire.
Here.
Yazdi.
Here. Also with us are Municipal Clerk Jamie McCarthy, our Borough Attorney Tracy Wang. Also in the audience is our engineer Tom Baraki. Welcome, Tom. And our planner Ed Snipes. Thank you for being here, Ed. This is an official meeting of the governing body of the Borough of Bloomingdale on January 2nd, 2013. Public notification of the date, time, and place of this official meeting was faxed to all local news media and posted here at Borough Hall. As for State Fire Code, I aim to acknowledge there are two emergency exits in these chambers, the door which you walk through, and exit to my left. If an emergency was to arise, please rise from your chairs, exit orderly out those exits and out of the building. If anyone has questions on that fire code, please raise your hand at that time. Thank you. There's no need for an early executive session. There are two non-agenda items that I'll raise in case the public wishes to speak as an agenda early public comment item. And those are a resolution brought forward by Councilman Rich Della Ripa regarding New Jersey state rules and regulations that affect our ability to hire interim superintendents as savings to the borough, and Rich will address that when we get to it. And also a resignation from our senior advisory board. Those are the two non-agenda items that will be added as we proceed. The first order of business, what I'd like to do, we have a presentation from Burgess Associates in regards to the proposed Riverwalk plan. And I'd like to open the meeting with that presentation, and we'll let Mr. Snipes do his presentation, and then any residents, any council person who has questions after the presentation is complete, we will field those questions, and Ed and Tom will assist us in that. And then we will open to early public comment for agenda items after that point in time. Before I open the floor to Ed, I'll defer to Councilwoman Shortman, who wanted to say a few words.
Thank you. I think thank you is in order for a lot of people who've brought this to this day. First of all, Passaic County for their grant to help us to fund this. Particularly Kathleen Karen, who's always a pleasure to work with, who's always available for anything you need. The committee that worked on this is Jerry DeLazier, Vi Shipley, and Kara Jagiello. Paul Darmafowski, our borough engineer, who's represented by Tom Barati here tonight, was there and did the walks, and as always is totally professional. To Ed Snipes from Burgess Associates, it was a pleasure working with him. He answers your questions immediately. He's walked the property. He's met with the committee time after time to bring us here tonight. And also Donna Holmquist, his associate. The input that we've had from the Environmental Commission is always welcome. Ross Kushner from Paquonic River Coalition could not be here tonight, but he did send a correspondence. He also was active with this group and this committee. And of course, the Master Gardeners. If any of you have not been to the Senior Center, if you go once a week, it will bloom before your eyes. It is the most magnificent garden that's hidden by our Senior Center. So I was there on Monday, and I came in the building here and told everybody, bring lunch tomorrow. Eat lunch by the garden, because it is just unbelievable. They work there so diligently, it just gets better and better. I thought I'd do just a very brief history of why we are looking at this why we are looking at this Riverwalk. And let me begin with the Bloomingdale Open Space Master Plan. And this is what it says. The Paquonic River is the most dynamic and underutilized natural resource in the borough of Bloomingdale and the greater region. Efforts should be undertaken to create a new access to the river and create a greenway corridor for pedestrian use along the river. Municipal property should be examined for opportunities to develop a path system and linkages to other public, quasi-public, and appropriate river properties. Now, in 2006, the Passaic County came to Bloomingdale and sought the residents' input for a vision plan of what we would want to see in our community. And that vision plan is of record now from 2006, and one of the recommendations by our townspeople was the vision plan highlights a riverwalk element using the Paquonic River as a distinct advantage for Bloomingdale. The Riverwalk carries a soft edge along the river, meaning there's a buffer of at least 15 feet at all times from the river edge. The Riverwalk is meant more as a walking and biking trail. The Riverwalk will not be paved, rather it will be more of a compressed gravel surface to allow for little or no stormwater issues. And the Paquonic River Coalition, Ross sent us this letter. We have been involved with this project from the beginning and thank the borough for considering our views. Actually, our involvement predates this project as we were supportive of a similar idea in the town center discussion several years ago. The Paquonic River is an important amenity for Bloomingdale. Few communities are privileged to have such a pristine waterway in their downtown area. For too long, the river has been ignored or treated only as a problem. Elevating it as a central and positive component, as this process proposes, can only be good for both the community and the river. PRC strongly supports this concept. Please contact me if you need additional information or wish to discuss these matters at a greater length. So for all these years, Bloomingdale is now at this step, funded by Passaic County, and we are here to see the next provision for this river walk in this Bloomingdale focus study. Anyone who would like to see it, I'm sure we'll have a copy in the library and there will be copies upstairs. And we'll hope that we can continue to make Bloomingdale's economy grow through this river and passive and recreation for people to come and sit. Somebody who overheard us today talking about it said, I had no idea there was a waterfall in Bloomingdale. So come and sit by the waterfall by our senior center and give yourself a real treat. I'd like to present Ed Sneckis from Burgess Associates, who will do the presentation. Thank you.
So if the microphone picks me up, I think I'll sit down and also so other people can see the presentation. But thank you for having me, Mayor, members of the council, members of the public. My name is, again, Ed Sneckis. I'm a professional planner and a licensed landscape architect with the firm of Burgess Associates. And we're excited to be part of this project, part of this study. And what I'll have for you this evening is a PowerPoint presentation where I'll walk you through the actual study, the components of the study, several goals and objectives that we look to achieve from the overall river walk. But what we focused in on was primarily the feasibility. How can we, in fact, institute sort of a river walk area along an area that's been historically developed over time? And that development pattern took on many forms, many shapes, but that over time there was the sort of turning towards Main Street or the main roadways instead of the river environment itself. And this, I think, is an opportunity for the borough to take a look at possibly recapturing the resource in various ways, in various forms. And you'll see that we have more than just one idea for the borough to consider in the overall plan. So with that, I'd like to give a general overview of the study. Passaic, as Councilwoman Shorman mentioned a moment ago, Passaic County had a 2006 visioning statement recommending greater integration of the river resource into the downtown and the borough's environment. Obviously, as was mentioned a moment ago, the Bloomingdale open space and master plan. Integration would provide greater recreation, access, and utilization of this resource, improve focus and character, and economic improvement by opportunities for additional focus and additional interest in the downtown area. Also improve pedestrian connections, greater opportunities for interconnections between properties, but also between areas of resources within the community. That I think is another opportunity provided in the overall study. As a general overview, the study includes an analysis of existing conditions. What are some of the existing features within the Riverwalk area? We developed several goals and objectives for consideration as possible objectives for the master plan, the planning board, and for the borough itself. Also, we have walk criteria and alignment. We actually developed specific recommendations as to what the walk would take shape as. We also have a pilot study area, some regional connections, opportunities to connect to some regional open space features. In addition, we have easements and funding sources that might be possibilities for implementing portions of this Riverwalk study, and then an overall implementation plan approaching how to go about implementing the Riverwalk as we move further down the road. First, I'll touch on analysis, the overview of the study area. What you're seeing here is a map that shows, and can everybody see that, or should we turn off some lights? I'm not sure if we have the ability to shut any lights off.
We do. Is everyone okay, or we want lights off?
Can you see that?
Everyone's okay?
Looks good. Thumbs up. Thank you very much. But to the north, or to the top of the illustration is north. The river environment runs to the left and to the right, east and western direction. And what the study area included were properties on both sides of Main Street in order to properly assess all the potential resources and assets and inventory those assets so that this study becomes a springboard potentially for future studies, future improvement plans, and things of that nature. So we wanted to make sure we were giving you the most we could from the nature of the study. In the analysis, the length is about 8,700 linear feet, or about 1.5 miles in length, so pretty significant. The study area size of the overall lots and everything else that's included on both sides of Main Street is 79 acres. And again, the primary focus of the study is the frontage of the Paquonic River, obviously. It's a Riverwalk study. But that we also included the Main Street area, the Newark Compton Turnpike, in order to assess the resource. And in some areas, as you'll see in our study, we recognize there are existing conditions that are going to limit the ability to connect the walk in a continuous walk. So we wanted to look at other opportunities. What are other ways of making a connection within the downtown for the continuation of the study, but also what would make it practical in the overview. As I mentioned a moment ago, we did an overall analysis of the whole study area. Again, north being directly up in this illustration. What this map shows is the existing mix of uses. We did an existing land use map, that's the planning term, for an analysis of all the existing uses. You can see in this collage of colors, there are many different mixture, a large variety of mixture of uses, from anywhere from what's shown in blue as municipal properties to areas shown in red, which are commercial. And there's a combination of colors as well, which are a mixture of various uses on properties. So the area is pretty diverse. In the land use area calculations, under the existing land use summary, commercial, industry, office, and mixed use is about 53% of the study area. Residential, single family, and multifamily is about 23.5%. Which was surprising to us in the amount of residential in the study area. But as you probably know, there is several areas that are still either single-family homes or have multifamily residences within the district. We also have public, semi-public, and park, which totals 20% of the overall study area. In addition to that, you have vacant properties. That's about 3.3%. But again, the vacant properties were largely properties that were related to steep slopes or areas that have a lot of restrictions associated with them, and or floodplains. In addition to that, in the study, you'll see an analysis of zoning, where we identify the 6 zone districts that encompass the study area. What may not be apparent from the illustration up here, but yet in the mapping, is the differentiation of some of the colors. You have everywhere from retail and general commercial, which is the large majority of the district, to actually public uses, which are in green. And then in addition to that, light manufacturing uses, which are sort of the purplish, bluish color off to the left-hand side. So it is a diversity of zoning as well as existing land use in the study area. In addition, we took a look at any of the community resources or public features and municipal facilities in the study area. And with this, I'll enlarge several of them. Sorry, is that in focus? Trying to get the best opportunity for everybody here. But as you see off towards the west or to the left of the illustration, I just enlarged that area. We have the senior center, which is showing the lighter green in the study area. You have the municipal facilities in blue. And then the ball fields, which are shown in that triangular area. Just to touch on another series of features, you have the Samuel R. Donald Elementary School that's shown in sort of the hash pattern on the upper left-hand corner, the post office along Main Street, and then we also have the religious institutions, as well as Sloan Park. Sloan Park's a green space feature within the downtown that we want to also be cognizant of and recognize. In addition, in the analysis, we looked at physical features and limitations within the study area, and those include environmental considerations such as floodplains, as probably everybody is well aware, steep slopes, as I mentioned a moment ago, as well as wetlands, and how wetlands play into, or those environmental features play into the overall study area. We mapped each one of those features based upon regional data that was available to us, including in blue that you'll see, which is the 100-year floodplain, and then the areas of red, which are your steep slopes, which encompass and border the study area. And you also have areas of steep slopes which are also coincide with the actual river environment itself. Those represent obvious challenges in the ability to configure a walkway adjacent to those steep slopes. And so what we have in the plan is a recognition of that and ways of trying to address that condition. In addition, in our analysis, we wanted to make sure we were aware of the Highlands Master Plan consideration. This area is in a planning area designation. It's not in your protection area designation, but yet we wanted to be aware and be cognizant of what sort of features we should be respecting or understanding in alignment of a walkway. And under the Highlands criteria, under their master plan, we have hydrant soils, prime aquifer recharge soils, and open water protection areas. Those play into what type of development, what type of improvements could be made. These are then mapped on this illustration over the study area. The sort of reddish color is your open water protection area. The bluish area is your prime groundwater recharge area. And that's pretty much encompassing the westerly portion or off to the left-hand component of the illustration. And then you have your hydrant soil, which is shown in the lighter green. Physical features and limitations, we have other physical limitations such as existing buildings and their proximity to the river environment. You have parking areas, residential yards, roadways and bridges that actually limit and interrupt the corridor, in addition to steep slopes. I'll just touch on a few of them. This is an aerial illustration where we zoomed in on the intersection of Main Street coming from Butler into Bloomingdale and Main Street in Bloomingdale. And at that location, people are probably well aware of the proximity of some of the buildings in that area. And what's shown in the red circles are buildings that are very close to, if not right on, the sloped areas of the river environment. In addition, you have in rear portions of parking lots, you have parking areas that come rather close, if not right up to the top of bank of some of the streams. So that does have to be also considered as well. You have residential rear yards as well as shown in this illustration. In addition to that, you have roadways and bridges that obstruct the alignment of the river wall. So we wanted to be aware and also recognize those existing features, but at the same time, can we come up with creative ideas on how to deal with those limitations? And so some of the findings is that we have private land holdings that limit direct access to the river from a public perspective. We also have building and site development that's oriented away from the river resource, and that's something I think that we'd like to capture and possibly redirect or statement that may come out of this study to try to encourage the capturing the resource from a visual or an aesthetic perspective. Also, we have development impediments up to the edge of the river, as I mentioned a moment ago. And we also have property drainage that largely drains directly into the river environment. We want to also recognize in the study that occurs. It's a pre-existing condition. We're not going to force people to change. It's just a matter of can we make improvements as we consider future improvements to improve drainage, and we treat the water possibly through what's called rain gardens or other stormwater similar features to try to absorb some of the pollutants and cool the water before it empties into the river environment. And from this, we developed a series of goals and objectives, and again, I'll skip through these are numerous. But from a general topic standpoint, you'll see at the top of the presentation slide, we have the goal of recreation opportunity. Here we'd like to establish linkages. We'd like to foster recreation through some of the connections to open space and community facilities. Also have an opportunity to walk and jog along the river environment, outdoor health and wellness, and provide opportunities to observe wildlife. In addition, some of the goals regarding community building. The river environment can help promote awareness of the historic and cultural resources through signage and awareness of certain features and history of the district, making that easily identifiable and safe connection between the river walk and the community. Also promote a pedestrian-friendly character in the town, thereby encouraging walking and interconnection between properties. Work with neighboring communities to promote connections, so we have not just a river walk within Butler, but we have other connections throughout adjacent communities. Economic growth, increase the value of adjoining properties, that's very important. I think the river walk is an asset that can do that, and it's been proven in other studies and other improvement areas throughout the country. Foster the central business district area improvement and investment or reinvestment through the shared amenity. Also promote economic growth by linking to the Riverwalk to the downtown business district. Increase customer visits. Also recruit new businesses by expanding existing ones in the way they're developed or oriented in their development pattern. Also prevent incompatible intrusions or impacts that reduce the economic value of the area. Also ecological opportunities. You have to enhance and protect existing natural areas. Also preserve wildlife habitat. Promote public awareness, improve conservation, provide education, absorb and filter runoff, as we pointed out a moment ago. The goal is also to realize Passaic County planning objectives, and that's what was mentioned a moment ago regarding what's identified in the 2001 Open Space Master Plan, which linking isolated parcels, also encouraging protection of open space, linear corridors. Also, a goal is to support the state planning of New Jersey, which is to promote consistency with these draft final goals, final site and state strategic plan goals, by preserving and enhancing critical state resources and the preservation of scenic and recreational assets, since these features will sustain and improve the quality of life for residents while attracting economic growth, as was mentioned a moment ago. And so with that, just generally going over that planning components, I'd like to now focus in on the Riverwalk criteria and alignment features that we have in the study area. Essentially, the concept design calls for a 20-foot plus or minus wide easement. That easement would be sort of a conservation easement or pathway-like easement. And that's similar to what's along the Hudson River, along the Hudson River environment, or what's called the Gold Coast area, for instance, in Edgewater. They have an easement area that fronts many of the properties that they can use towards their coverage factors or development characteristics of the property, but they would have to provide an area that would allow for an alignment of a pathway. So that's one of the things that's recommended in the study. The path width would be approximately 6 feet wide. It would be a loose type path, as was mentioned a moment ago. Place the path in areas where practical, and again, realizing we have existing conditions. The idea is an overview study so that we can establish a master plan, realizing this is going to take several years to implement or possibly realize because of the existing conditions and some of the limitations that are there. But yet, if you don't start somewhere, the idea here is to start an idea and see where it goes. Use the Main Street sidewalk as a connector wherever there's obstructions, wherever you need to circumvent those obstructions. In the study, we provide an illustration showing a typical cross-section. What would the walkway look like in a cross-section perspective? What we're envisioning is that we come no closer than the top of the bank of the stream, of about 6 feet away from the top of the bank. And then the path itself will be 6 feet wide. That would enable joggers and pedestrians to coexist in opposite directions within that area. And what you see along the top of the illustration, sorry, my PowerPoint, my laser pointer died, but it's about a 20-foot easement, it's approximately from here to there. And we show approximately where neighboring property could put a fence within that easement area. And we did a quick computer illustration to show visually how could this be integrated or woven within existing conditions of what you have, where in many conditions we have existing parking areas. What we look to do in those areas is to try to circumvent the parking areas as best as possible, provide the pathway as a linear environment, a 6-foot wide linear environment along the river environment, but then also to have ideas and encourage areas of what's called like a rain garden area, where you have your sheet flow coming from the parking areas and try to intercept that sheet flow by these infiltration basins, small little depressions that would allow the water to percolate into the ground. Obviously, it's very close to the river, but it's a way of trying to treat and cool the water before it does drain directly into the river environment, which is only helpful for the ecological condition of the river. In addition to that, we have connecting paths from adjacent businesses, and that's what's illustrated at the top of the parking area, so that we have interconnections. And what's important in a linear environment is that you have many ways to access that linear environment. So you're not feeling like you're trapped or you have no way of getting to that area. In addition, we illustrate where accessory structures could be permitted on adjacent properties that could be close to, up to that 20-foot line is what is some of the concepts that are shown. And so now I'd like to zoom out and kind of show you where within the illustrations that we have in the study, where the pathway alignment is recommended. And this is really a conceptual alignment. It all depends on existing conditions, what's out there. But what's shown as a yellow dot, and it's consistent throughout each one of these sequences of illustrations I'll show you, is the preferred alignment. That's the optimal location. Will this optimal location be realized? It may not in certain areas, but what we show also, and try to capture in the illustrations, is some of the existing sidewalk conditions. As was shown at the top of Main Street, which is shown in red, and I'm pointing to now, is the existing sidewalk areas. And what's shown in the lighter green is recommendations for sidewalk improvements. So that this plan can be somewhat of a master plan for additional sidewalk improvements to improve the pedestrian connections in the downtown area. But those pedestrian connections along the Main Street could also provide other opportunities of connecting to the Riverwalk environment. So if one section was not completed, there's the ability to walk out on Main Street and interconnect between sections. You'll see this will be a slight animation of the mapping. This now zoomed down towards where there is a municipal section of open space. That is an area of existing vegetation and some landfill conditions that are out there that need to be cleaned up. But yet it provides an opportunity that you'll see in a moment for what we call a pilot study area where you could do an installation of a walkway system in a fairly inexpensive manner to try to show the idea and help initiate how the pathway work and to be connected to adjacent neighborhoods. So with that, I just would move around in this illustration. Here's the municipal building at the top of the map. The senior center is here. Here is where Councilwoman Shortman was mentioning a moment ago, where the existing gardens are adjacent to the senior center. And you can see within the alignment where we're recommending a pathway be connected in a linear environment adjacent to that senior center, and also to then be adjacent to the parking area to be parked in this evening in order to come to tonight's meeting. And some of the view sheds that are shown in arrows in blue, but then you can see wherever we had an opportunity, we try to recommend interconnections back out to Main Street so that there would be a loop type system or the ability to use a portion of the pathway alignment. Here as we go further towards the east, we see that the color changes from a greenish area to a yellow. That's sort of the preferred alignment, realizing there are certain limitations. You have the, I believe it's called Beaver Brook, that runs under Main Street at this location and then drains down to the river environment. That obviously is going to represent a certain limitation. There's also significant steep slopes in this area. But if we don't identify something of a plan and investigate that, there may not be an interconnection in this area. What's probably more relative in this location is the idea of extending a sidewalk along Main Street. As you may recall, there is no sidewalk there now. I think that's an interruption between certain portions of your downtown area that should be interconnected. This could be as simple as a 4-foot wide sidewalk, but obviously we have drainage conditions to consider. It's not all going to be easy, but yet it's an idea that we can potentially foster as funds become available. These red arrows show you some of the limitations of buildings and their proximity to the river environment, and how some of that's going to interrupt the likelihood that a practical path can be established specifically in this area. What I see more so in this area is the interconnection of the sidewalk environment down, and then there could be an adjacent connection to the river walk as it continues further towards the east. Just going to keep panning through this so you can see the alignment, some of the interconnections that we're talking about. Here is where the bridge occurs that goes over the point at this location and has a significant obstruction to the pedestrian connection. What has been done, though, in other communities, for instance, the Saddle River County Park that has been established on the Saddle River, is an actual walkway that goes underneath the bridge. And that can be done as well at this location due to the grade change. Something else that could be studied in that location as an alternative to maintain that linear connection of the river walk. Again, now we're near Sloan Park. We show the interconnections in adjacent neighborhoods, and then the walkway would eventually connect back out to the streetscape. Because the river itself comes back and then connects so closely to the streetscape environment at that location. The bridge connection to Sloan Park is identified here as a need for interconnection. What has been identified in the study and the report is that Sloan Park will become more of a passive type park. And again, that becomes a recreational feature that's important to interconnect from that standpoint. The pathway continues towards the east along the river environment with various points of interconnection, and all we're recommending here is that sidewalks be interconnected with frontages of buildings so that there is that ability, to connect the pathway to the streetscape environment. I'll just keep continuing towards the east, and it's the easterly end of the study area, ending where Main Street crosses over the Potomac River. And here you have the building proximity to the existing gas station that's at that location, and some of the limitations that that represents. So with that, I just wanted to go over the overview study. We have to now show the pilot study area, and this shows an approximate alignment of a pathway. Again, this can be configured in the field, but a very, very simple approach to a possible loop system within that area. This is, I think, 2nd Street and 3rd Streets here. But here's the senior center, and then that loop system can connect and be adjacent to the municipal parking lot, and then connect back out to the main roadways at the top of the illustration. We also have regional connections identified in the study area. Just some of the easement ideas. The easement will be a mechanism. The owner uses the land and sell pass along to their heirs, but must honor the terms of an easement. Permits certain public uses such as the pedestrian trail. Easement holder, it would be a government agency or a non-profit or land trust. There are various ways to approach it. In addition to that, we have conservation easements. They need to balance, though, the property rights, obviously, with the intentions of the walkway. It's an important consideration. It's identified in the study as well. It's required to be recorded on the property deed so that it encourages the future use of the easement area. Potential easements can be acquired through either owner donation, placing conditions on approval for development or redevelopment during municipal review, or possible incentives through zoning. It's another consideration. Purchase through funding sources, I'll talk about in a moment. Municipality can purchase easements through their normal mechanisms of bonding. There are, if in fact acres grants come back, right now obviously they're in a state of flux, but then there could also be open space taxes to help improve and achieve these sort of objectives for the greater good of the community. Some of the funding sources, as I mentioned a moment ago, New Jersey Green Acres, Safe Routes to Schools, they promote sidewalks and interconnections, some of the national Greenway grant programs that are available. What's important for some of these grants and programs is to have a study. That study provides you with the basis by which you can then pursue some of the grant opportunities. And that allows you then to get a leg up on someone else who's just conceiving an idea. When you have a study such as this that provides that foot in the door to get you through the additional discussion. Not to take up more time, I know you have a full agenda tonight. We've been through some of the public input, the refinement phase. We look for any input tonight, but that ultimately we look to have governing body endorsement, possible planning board master plan consideration, and adoption of possible ordinance amendments and recommendations that would encourage the Riverwalk area to be established in one way or another. Grant funding for the pilot study area and would encourage further design development of those pathways. And so with that, I'd just like to summarize and say thank you very much, and I would open up for questions.
Thank you, Ed. What I'd like to do, if you could possibly put a slide back to the most, a slide that shows the entire run of the
Sure, certainly.
walk. In case anyone has to address that.
Small project.
That's fine. I know there's one early on.
How's that?
Just to give a visual. And also, before we open the question, just for the record, you had mentioned early on Main Street and Newark Compton Turnpike, it's Amber Turnpike, so we just have to just amend that.
My apologies.
No problem. What we're going to do, we're going to go to any question and answers, and I'd ask anyone who's wishing to ask a question to please come on up to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, and we'll begin our dialogue. Who would like to start?
John Hudson, 12 Walnut Street. My question would be flooding. How would flooding be handled?
Certainly, it's a good question. As you noticed, actually, it's opportune. We have this map up. The area is in a floodplain. What is proposed is a loose type of a pathway, so that pathway would allow the flooding to occur. Flooding is just it's a condition that exists. It's something that occurs out there. We wouldn't look to change any of the grades, so we would be able to implement the pathway. But that if a flooding condition did occur, an extreme event, you have the ability to come back in and just reestablish the pathway because it is a loose type path. Whereas if there's a harder path, such as an asphalt path or a brick paver type pathway, as you can imagine, that may be ripped up as a result of the flow of water. The looser type path is much easier to reestablish the pathway. So the idea here is to allow flexibility if there is a massive flood.
But still reestablishing the pathway would still be very costly.
Yeah.
We're talking, I think you said about a mile and...
Correct. The overall length is about 1.5 miles. But yet, I don't envision the entire length to be a path, continuous path. Because we have so many obstructions and limitations, the idea here is for certain areas to be established. What I've seen in some communities is to put in this type of pathway, allowing it then to be in a condition where it could potentially flood. That is a condition. But I think what's to be balanced here is the benefits of this linear pathway. What I've seen in many communities as they establish sort of an open space feature in a floodplain is that the community is willing to wait, or we can do it as a loose wood chip type of pathway where we commonly have a lot of source for wood chips and things of that nature, so it reduces the cost of repair of that.
When you do that though, when you do have flooding, wouldn't that cause problems? When you do have flooding downstream, now you're having everything washed away being put in there, it's causing obstructions downstream?
It really would not be, in my opinion, that much brought out from this, because basically it's a mulch type path, the organic material which would flow downstream. It really wouldn't be obstructions per se. The type of benches and things of that nature I envision here, which really isn't illustrated just yet, is the idea of possibly even using stone, large stones or boulders as sitting areas, just sort of intermittent temporary benches, but not temporary, permanent benches, but yet those would not generally succumb to flooding conditions because of their resistance.
Big things float away? No, I'm just...
No, absolutely. And I guess to that question, I understand the loose surface versus pavers because they would wash away. Right. But wouldn't the bank that loose surface sits on be washed away as well?
Well, in
certain areas?
some conditions it can. It depends upon the hydrology of the stream. That can occur, and that may be more costly. In certain situations, though, you have your existing tree resources. And what we've tried to do in the report is to recommend limited, if any, tree removal as a result of the new installation, specifically along the top of the bank. I think what you have in your existing conditions is the type of rock as well as tree resources that help to glue that bank together as much as possible. Obviously, in extreme events like you experienced with, I think it was Irene, where you really had most erosion, you will have, especially during turns in the stream where most energy hits that side of the bank. So it's something that it's to be balanced. And if it's in certain areas, depending upon the engineering recommendations, we come up with ideas that, you know what, it should not be at that location. That's where you terminate the path and bring it back out to the street. I do recognize that a continuous linear path probably is not going to be the most practical.
I'm kind of curious too, why any one organization would want to fund something like this because our history of flooding. I mean, we've had, how many? Two, three in just a few years. Just curious.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to the criteria they look at. They're rewarding funding, but I'm sure it would be a component.
Yeah, what I've experienced is their review of the flooding conditions, what types of floods that may occur in certain areas. In addition to that, they look at the balance of resource that's being made, the recreation feature that's being made, and they balance that out. And it's important.
Thank you. Yes?
Jennifer Lovefield, 17 Cedar Street. I had several questions, and flooding is, as Ms. Hudson has stated, we have major issues. We have watched fingers go away. We've watched water come flying through the bank parking lot. All of Main Street gets flooded. Until there are issues that are above us are corrected, doing a river walk makes absolutely no sense. Because we've had our park where we've lost use of the park. We have DEP regulations that are involved. You have water coming through the car wash. There's virtually no space in back of that car wash. Are you suggesting that maybe the town should do eminent domain for this little thing? Because absolutely, that should not be. You're saying vacant area is 2.2 acres. Yet you're putting restrictions on developers. We've tried to become more developer friendly and work with our developers. But now you're saying to put restrictions on the developers should they decide to develop behind there. Meanwhile, we're trying to bring development into the town, into the center of town, so that we have businesses and we have residences. It's making no sense. Bottom line, what is the cost to do all of that?
Because the alignment was not completely configured because of the potential limitations of certain buildings and things of that nature, you don't have an overall cost of what this would come. The most important feature that I'd like to focus on is that we're not looking to take away development rights. We're looking to work within the development conditions. It's understood. You have a very shallow property in many instances between Main Street and the adjacent river embankment, per se. What is encouraged here is not a removal of someone's rights, a taking and putting it into the public domain. It is the idea of just having an overlay over someone's property. It may limit where they can put a building, but most likely they can't put a building there anyway because of some of the flooding conditions that we were talking about. They could possibly put a parking lot in those areas. But yet what we look to do is to encourage, and again, the zoning isn't specifically identified as to what would occur. But what I do say in the report is that incentives should be considered to allow a portion, a 6-foot wide area, to be established for the pathway so that you could possibly encourage additional density, additional floor area ratio within the adjacent development, something to that effect. So So it sort of develops almost a public-private partnership between the public trying to encourage this interconnection and the private resources that are there. It's totally understood the economic improvement, the economic viability of properties is paramount, and that's recognized in the study. And it's not something we look to try to take away in this study area.
Taking away parking spaces that are behind some of these buildings that are right on Main Street. There's no parking to start off with.
I would not take away parking spaces. I would look
But
for
if you're flooding the river and you have a flood and everything goes downstream, that means Bloomingdale residents will have to replace whatever is swept downstream. It's a cost to us.
just the path, just the path.
Just the path, but we've already replaced pavers numerous times. The wall on Main Street, right after the accountant, is it? That's right there by the park.
Right by Stone Park.
The wall's gone. So to me, until it's straightened out above us, you shouldn't be thinking or even dreaming about a river walk. And a river walk usually stays alongside a river. It doesn't come back out to Main Street and then go back in. It just makes no sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before you start, if I just may, I just want to say, Ed was a planner retained to design a plan, so this, in essence, Ed's the messenger. So if there's questions like opposition, I think they should be directed to the governing body more than Ed. He's not making an opinion here of whether it's good, bad, or indifferent for Bloomingdale. Ultimately, that would be a governing body someday's decision. So questions such as for or against or things like that, I think it would be better addressed to the governing body. I'm sure Ed will be willing to answer, but I just wanted to stress that he's in a sense the messenger. No, I appreciate that. Yeah.
What is the estimated usage of this?
The estimated usage? I did not develop pedestrian counts or what that might be, but I would anticipate it would be significant. Yes, because in many instances in my experience, whenever we established a new park or a new open space feature such as this, especially a linear feature, what many communities have experienced is a substantial increase in pedestrian activity.
First year or
For the first year, first or second year. That would be something else we would have to study as far as how to maintain it. Periodic replacement. It would have to be probably a yearly replacement of the mulch or soft cinder type surface, if that's what it's to do. That would have to be anticipated in the budget.
Bi-weekly, who's going to maintain it? Throw stuff in the river, throw
Throw the stuff in the river, right?
I mean, like,
Well, I think to answer your question would be, if this was to come to,
not everybody's idea.
if this was a reality someday, then the answer would be DPW, Department of Public Works, as they maintain parks, would have to assume some responsibility here. Garbage can changing, weed whacking, which is I think what you're alluding to. Police patrol, whether it be by bicycle, yeah, there's obviously increased services as a result of something like this.
Can I just,
Yeah.
I don't think we can do a comparison to Saddlebrook and Ridgewood and that area, because that's a continuous path that goes all the way through either direction. You don't have to come out to the main roads if you want to. We're many times on a bicycle, there's coffee shops along the way once you get up into Ridgewood. I don't think that's a comparison to this, because this is, you go 25 feet, you come back out. Go back in 25 feet, you come back out. It's not even a bike path, as far as I'm concerned. You're not going to ride a bike and just keep, because it's a continuous stop. It's not a jogging path, because it's a continuous stop. It's going to be for somebody to fish on the river and sit there and look at the river. That's the way I look at it, because there's too many ins and outs. Right? Because we saw the study one time before, and we discussed that even when you come out of here, you have to go down Hamburg Turnpike to get back in. There's no easy way. Wells Fargo Bank, you're going to lose 20 parking spots, the bank's going to lose 20 parking spots? I think you probably a little pushback. That bridge you're talking about going over, I see the pictures that you're showing with it looks like a creek versus a river. But this river moves. Even a regular rain, forget floods. A good heavy rain, this river's up and going over the waterfalls in the back, over the other waterfalls at Waterfall Village, because we have another one up there. this river moves. Bank erosion happens all the time, all right? My fire department experience, fishing experience is back here. Good trout stream, if you want to fish in the back here, you catch the next fish. But to really, a river walk, a river jogging path, or a bicycle path is continuous throughout many towns. I think if we're going to look at this, you have to follow how to get across to get into the Butler side, because there's more room on that side than there is on the Bloomingdale side to make it continuous. Long-term version, I think this is going to be really expensive. But we have to fix the front versus fix the back. People are driving to town, they want to look at what your town looks like in the front, and then we get to the back, and then it kind of works together. I think the long-term goal would be nice to do this, but we have to make our town look good at the beginning. When you pull into town, to entice people to come here, to use the Riverwalk. And maintenance is a concern. It's definitely a concern on my end, because it's going to be costly to replace those centers. Whether it's $1,000 or $25,000, depending how much flood takes away. We're going through a thing with the DEP now for flooding, and we're having a hard time just getting a section approved. I can't picture getting this all approved. It'll take years, in my opinion. So that's just my take.
The permit process would be quite
Extremely
expensive.
expensive.
And again, just, if I may, just for the record, and again, so the public knows, this is not something that is going to start tomorrow. This was something that the governing body in 2011 sought funding for this plan, and then Burgess was hired to do the plan. You know, we're just at the eliciting stage. You know, like John said, I'm not asking for every council person's opinion. Is, in a perfect world, is it beautiful? Nice, sure. But there's a lot of other things that absolutely have to come first in a borough. But never say never, I guess.
I would say never, because the plan, it's a plan.
But there's a flooding issue.
You have to start somewhere, and this is where we are today.
Right. There's a lot of areas. Just so the public knows, it's not something we're coming out and we're going to bond tomorrow and build a river wall. We're not even close. But there's the flooding issue is the biggest concern that Mrs. Allfield raises is, that really has to be solved before we can even take that step. And there's so many variables on this project. But again, this is why we're here, to get public input, council input, and we go from there. Whoever would like to speak next, yes. I'm sorry. Come on up, Tom, but Councilman Yazdi was going to say something. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to ask the feasibility of the study. Does it ever take into account cost to residents? You know, how do we get a complete study that shows us what it's going to impact us, taxes?
As far as the overall cost, the reason why we didn't do an overall cost is because of so many variables. There's so many smaller components of it. What we did do was a pilot study area. And that pilot study area is about $58,000 to make that park area that we have outlined as a pilot study. And that's provided in the study and the report. So it provides you with sort of a linear footage estimate of what that cost would be. And that's something that I could then report back to you to, okay, did the entire preferred alignment, as we call it, what would that cost be? I can get you that number. But that's without certain contingencies of knowing you have buildings in the way, you have some roads in the way, things of that nature. You have to still
So
consider
if you don't mind just going back to that kind of map you have.
Yes.
I just want to try to understand, the 8,000.
Which is the wooded area behind the cedars.
Right.
So everyone has a visual.
I mean, to that point, we do have a section of the river in town already, right by Swan Park, we can see the river. If that's what we're talking about. At least there, if you can look across and see it from the park.
So, Ed, if you would, point out the senior center. Just as the,
I don't know what.
Right. That's the
What you
senior
see
center.
here is the senior center. This is the parking area for the senior center, right here. And so what is shown is a pathway, is this linear configuration here, and then the configuration all the way up to the adjacent street. That whole length is approximately $58,000 contingency costs.
And that's just tree removal, a mulch pathway,
Pathway.
benches, that kind of thing, $60,000, just something like that.
Could I point something out about the
Yeah.
cost? I know this has come up before. We know that we have a Rose Fund that has financed hundreds of thousands of dollars of improvement to our ball fields and to our recreation facilities in town. And much of that money, that tax has come to us. We've also had grants from Passaic County, from Green Acres. And I know that Ray has mentioned before, you know, the impact on the taxpayers. I really personally don't think this should impact the taxpayers. I think this has to be done. Right now, out of our Rose Fund, we pay $82,000 a year to DPW workers. I think when you talk about this pilot plan, I think they'd be a great instrument that we've already paid for that is part of our open space money. So we have that money, and Ed has presented us with various ideas for grants. Is this going to happen tomorrow or next spring? No, it is not. But I think that there can be a beginning, and I do look to the great improvement in our fields. And do they cost a lot of money every year to maintain and to redo? Absolutely. $100,000, I would say, a year just to, I look at what we pay Tri-State, it's tens of thousands of dollars. But do we have something beautiful that people admire and can use? Yes, we do. And I think this is the same type of beginning. No, I absolutely would not spend $50,000 or $20,000 and put in any increase in taxes. That's my personal opinion about this project. But I do think that we can work on volunteer groups to help. I know Sunny Brennan has been with us when we walked the property, wants to have input and direction and people who can pull out weeds. She's had Eagle Scouts come and work on things. It will be a beginning. It might be small, but it will be a beginning. And I don't know, I don't believe in this area. It really has a great danger of flooding. I'm not sure, I don't think it's seen any flooding with the last two storms we've had. But I think it would be a beautiful beginning. And I absolutely want to say again, I don't think it should burden the taxpayers.
Thank you. Mr. Tracy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tom Tracy, 158 Rafton Road. Nice thing that you said, don't kill the messenger. Maybe I said it once before, I'm absolutely 100% completely against this. And why? Because I've lived here for a long time. Okay? This area gets flooded something awful. We are either going to spend Bloomingdale taxpayers' money, county money, state money. I don't know. I'm just not that smart about it. But to the council, you know what? There's going to be money coming out of our pockets, and it's going to be washed away. I guess that was a pun, I guess. By the next storm, it really will. I saw a gazebo in Sloan Park that was purchased years ago, washed down. That must have been $35,000. We put up another one. It was washed away again, another $35,000. I'm sorry, don't quote me on the numbers, but that's what I think. So, what did the town just do after the last storm in Sloan Park? The town decided that they were going to take that nice, what do you call it, the swing set? Playground gym. Why was it taken out of Sloan Park? I believe that it was taken out of Sloan Park and put up higher to the Burton School, because if we didn't get it out of Sloan Park, we were going to lose it. Okay? Then I saw over at Sloan Park, all the bricks washed away. We are just, the amount of money that probably got washed away, it's going to happen again. Okay? How many years do we have to read in the newspaper that engineers are going to figure out how to alleviate the flooding down this river? It's not going to happen. I'm sorry. Okay. I am an engineer, and I will tell you that this project has been going on for probably 50 years. I did not live here in 1968, but I'm sure this place got flooded in 1968 when that big flood came through. The river walk is just going to be, I'm sorry, it might be a nice thing for people to but it's just going to be, it's going to be gone. I just feel like it's going to be a lot of money thrown at something that we really don't need. Okay? This council has done a lot of nice things, but this, I don't think, okay, it would be nice to be able to do it. Okay, it would be nice. Maybe I said it wrong. Maybe I said this is something we don't need. No, this would be a nice thing to do, but you know what? In my opinion, it's going to be washed away by the next flood. And then we're going to be here at another meeting, and we're going to say, why do we spend town money, or county money, or state, or I don't know where the money comes from, okay? But it's still money. A lot of money, I think, for something that, to me, looks obvious, it's just going to wash away. We're going to lose the mulch, we're going to lose the paving, we're going to lose the benches. It's all going to be gone. It's just going to, I mean, I don't know how strongly to say it. If we do this, it's going to be gone. And for many years, many engineers have said, oh, we can fix this problem. No, they can't fix this problem. They're going on for 50 or 75 years. Okay? So that's my comment to the council. I hope that we do not go through with this, because if you do, we're going to be here. We're going to say, why did we do this? If you vote for this, I will be here. I swear, and I'm sure of it, I will be here 2 or 3 years from now, and I will say, hey, I stood here on record, and I said, there's all your money, gone. That's what I think is going to happen, because I'm 100% against this.
Thanks for your comments. While we're here?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Yes, who would like to? Yes, sir.
Al Miller, 7 Mary Street. It's Edward.
This is. Al?
So I understand it. Now, the green section there is the pilot, right?
That, actually, no, the green alignment is the area of, that's the most practical approach for wedge pathway. Compared to the yellow is the desired.
If I made it wrong correctly, remember the plan was this could be phased.
That is correct.
What would be the first phase? What would be your recommendation of the first phase?
First phase would be the pilot area.
Which is what, the green?
Yes. That's shown, actually, it's shown more, excuse me, finish.
Yes.
It's shown more as the brown area.
Or the brown area?
Yes, that's the actual line.
Now, when you put these bats in and do whatever required, you said you clear it, take the trees down and clean all this, are you changing the elevation of anything else? Are you digging out any of the banks or anything now, anything that's going to prone to have more cover? So basically, you're going to take space that's already there, basically clean it out, okay? You basically install paths. You want to put some kind of stone benches that don't wash away. The only thing that could be affected by any kind of flood would be the mulch could be picked up and possibly pushed down river. Anything else to be moved along?
Not that I know.
What do we do with the space today?
No, it's just,
Do we have any, do we get any tax rolls off of that?
it's on our open space, Rossi. It's borough owned.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, that area does not, that's 30 feet above the riverbank. So that area does not, never will, never has flooded, that area.
Oh, okay.
But the concerns of any residents past were, where it does, from
Well,
Wells Fargo
pilot
down.
area, the pilot area don't usually
What's that?
flood.
It's all not borough property? No.
Well, here it is.
Fireman's Hall is not borough property. First Street down there is
No,
not
the
borough
green
property.
is
Green.
borough
How
property.
about the brown? I'm talking
But not
about
the
the brown.
brown.
The brown is-
I'm saying, I'm only saying, look, this is a pilot study. Okay, we're only talking about right to here, correct?
We were talking
Well,
about the
I
brown.
didn't show it extending behind the municipal building and behind the fire hall.
Okay, but I'm saying if we wanted to do something as a phased approach, a pilot study,
Phased up.
you could just do
You're
basically
making a mulch pathway. In my opinion, you're making a park, not a river walk doing that.
Okay, well, it's still a park in the river. I do agree with the fact, long
The
term.
point is, when you walk anywhere on that route path, you will not see the river.
I disagree.
I know. It's 90 feet below you. You're not going to see the river.
What about on the
Good
left?
views of the river, how's that?
It's not some place you can be right at the river for a fishing line, you see the buses a lot.
No, but there may be areas where we can carve out a location that we get access to the river. It's worth it. Not in certain areas. There's locations where you're adjacent to the old, what we call it, a wall area. That's up here, that you have access to.
That's the essence.
Connect towards the river.
Because that was the essence.
I'm sorry.
The essence.
But to your point, well, no, you're right. That's just how they're green area
All right,
pathway.
do we ever think anybody's going to build on that space? I mean, it's a dump. It's a dump. When I was growing up, it was a dump. All right, I mean, everybody owns that. I mean, the problem with the senior center.
You never know.
No, I'm just saying.
It's on our open space,
We're not
Rossi, so-
losing any revenue, right? Okay?
No.
We're not looking to reshape the entire place. We're looking to have a most fast. Do I think it's a bad idea? No, I don't think to do the pilot study, okay, if it's gonna cost $58,000, which ideally should. Realistically, that's what the roads fund was established for, to take care of these type of things. Now, to be honest, do I think we should look at the whole entire river, a mile and a half, and go looking at moving buildings and, you know what, pushing people on what they can do? No, I don't agree with that, but you know what, just this one particular area, being adjacent to the senior center, as well as close to the municipality. I mean, you're here, John, the rest of it, you look out front here, it's beautiful, it's nice, everything's well taken care of, it's good. I think we just did a pilot area, just that, I think that would be fine. I can't see going down river and changing everything. But for $58,000, I mean, if you want to go to a park, go to a park. But I think it's, right now, it's an eyesore. I mean, anything you can do to improve it. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah.
Out of that mile and a half, how much of that doesn't flood? From
There's a certain
in our alignment,
Yeah.
I would say probably 75% of it,
Does not flood.
because it's above the floodplain.
Okay.
But there are areas, like 25% of it, that's been achieved.
That little by Sloan Park.
Like Sloan Park, Sloan Park itself, the water, as you know, tops that area.
But from
runs
Wells
out-
Fargo
Wells
Bank
Fargo down to the
to the
bridge.
Riverdale Bridge floods.
That's a fact.
Yes, that goes back, Lena's parking lot is half full of water. The gas station is full of water.
Wells Fargo comes up over the banks, goes down to the car wash.
The Quick Mart by Liquor City underwater. So it floods from Wells Fargo Bank to the Riverdale Bridge, which I would dispute is 50% of it. Yeah, all the way to the end. But,
So between 75 and 50, we'll agree on
yeah.
that.
The only reason the other part does is because it's so much higher than the river makes it just very high. So you're not walking next to the river. Quite low. I'm sorry, anyone from the audience? Yes, please.
Meredith Massatello, 43 Bailey Avenue. Number one, I don't see that it's fair that the town could make changes that close to the river when the property owner is not allowed to by DEP. So I just want to make that.
Well, there'd be a permit process, certainly, so.
Well, but if the DEP is not going to permit a property owner to do that, why would they permit the town to do that? And if they do, that's wrong. That they allow a public entity to disturb the land and they don't allow a private entity to do that. That's not wrong, that's all.
Yeah, no, I get it. But there'd be a process, you know, should we be.
I have concerns, it would be another area for the police to patrol. We've had past drug and gang problems on Main Street, and to now move that behind the houses rather than on the street would make it even worse. So that's a great concern. My question would be, would there be any legal or insurance issues if people fall? Because there are areas where it's quite steep down to the river. Right now, if somebody were to fall in those locations, they're trespassing, it's their fault. If it's public property now, what implication is that for us legally and insurance-wise?
There would have to be additional insurance riders to encompass the open space, like any open space that we develop. It would have to be.
But it's not a flat ball field. You're talking about a cliff at some points almost.
No, it depends upon where we're talking about, because there's some areas that are not that steep, and they're rather about 4 to 5 feet away. Plus, we're talking about a minimum of 6 feet away from the top of the bank. So the idea there is to have vegetation growth that would limit your ability to fall down that area. But if there is an area that becomes closer than 6 feet, it's recommended that a railing be installed.
So that's another thing that would need to be replaced.
If you want to look at it that way, as in any open space, that's the case. I think what we're talking about here is a linear open space feature, and whether or not the borough, and this is entirely up to the borough, wants to explore that linear open space feature.
My question also would be where people park when they want to walk. Parking is always brought up as a concern in town, so we will be taking more parking away from business owners so that people can jog.
I would hope people would walk here.
They're not now, and there are sidewalks, and there are places where there are not sidewalks, which you're considering having a walk on, so.
This isn't here yet, so.
No, it's not here, but there are sidewalks, beautiful sidewalks on Main Street, that people aren't walking now. So I don't understand why people would want, as Councilman D'Amato said, why people would now want to walk behind the buildings. Have we solicited comments or concerns from the current property owners?
We did have public meetings.
They've all been noticed, we haven't really had much of
They
a
didn't
meeting.
come out.
We had a meeting in April, I believe.
Also, congestion and traffic on, it's kind of related to parking, congestion and traffic on Main Street, and even in Butler. When you go to AJ, sometimes it's tough to find a parking spot. That's right by the river. Will there be adequate fire access? I don't know. That's a concern, perhaps, or John?
It's not that.
Fire.
Where do you have access from individual properties?
I would also ask, well, I'd like to mention a point to Councilman Shortman. County grants, state grants, federal grants, Rose Fund, those are all tax dollars. So they do have an impact on the taxpayer. That's not free money.
Any additional
Okay, I'm
taxes
just saying.
in our municipal budget.
I'm just saying, those are tax dollars from taxpayers. Sometimes that's forgotten, and I want to remind again. Also, you talked about recapturing the resource of the river. Are there future plans to recapture the lake resources in town?
I have not been asked.
And so the question would be, why not? You know, if the river is a water resource that the public should recapture, should we not recapture the lake resources?
We absolutely should.
Well, I think
We should, but we haven't studied that yet. That would be another,
Wood and Oak Pond.
that's the point, dredging
So
the
my
ponds.
point is, Ms. Shortman, you're looking to take property away from private owners that happen to be on a Main Street river.
I'm not looking
Well, how is
to
that
take away-
any
to take-
different?
No.
You give people access to property of private property owners, and that is no different than trying to get access to Campy Lake, to Morse Lakes. Why do you have more rights than the Main Street property owners? Well, that's the
I'm not
point.
talking about eminent domain or taking away anybody's property. We
Conservation.
actually have businesses on Main Street, for one, that the antique shop, who would gladly welcome something like this and would work with us. I don't think this
If
would
they would
ever
like
get
a
to
river,
that point.
a little access to the, public access to the river, there's nothing in the DP to stop them from doing it now. Why do they need to use taxpayer dollars to do that?
I don't understand your question.
If the shop owner would like that.
They
Why
would
would they
like
not
a
do that?
river walk. We have given them permission to have a riverfront dining there, and to them it would be an enhancement. Some people, I'm sure, would like it, but it's a work in progress, working with people. You make it sound like we are going to go out and take away people's lands. I don't think anybody who would be in favor of this would be in favor of doing that. My other to you is, to my knowledge, gangs or people gathering don't do it on our property here now, on this pilot.
No, so
I
I
don't
don't
think-
Main Street.
But I don't think that this happens on our property now. We are responsible for anything that happens on this land right now.
During the town cleanup, I cleaned back on that property. First of all, it's not as flat as that would appear. There is a grade to that property. And there are always beer cans. So presumably people are back there drinking. I'm not opposed to making a public park there to make it less likely that people will hide out there to drink. But that's a park on property we already own. Put a river walk on Main Street behind buildings where we've had problems it's another shadow for them to hide it.
It's just,
Yes.
it's her.
I'm just asking her, I don't know that much, was there that much?
It's because it's public access to a place that they did not have access to before. So it's another place for our police to patrol. And then I would just put in the record as well that if conservation easement is the big way to gain access to the property, please do research, because that is a huge tool that Agenda 21 uses. I've spoken to this, not the same people, some of the same people. Be careful if you go forward with something like this, because there are a lot of parts of it that work really well with Agenda 21, and it scares me. I fear in this country for the loss of private property, and I have some great concern about it. So please be careful. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Donna Clausen, 133 Raymond Ave. So I'm just curious, on this, I know where this area is, and it looks very nice and green, but really most of it's parking. In the parking lot behind the, fire department.
And not all of it is parking lot. What I had motioned to before is that the existing parking lot is dashed line. Illustration, you see it in the center?
And so that's the senior center, the fire department's over on the other side.
Right, here's the fire department, here's the municipal.
Is this all green behind the senior center? That's all like trees? and
It's all
Yes,
wood.
this is all wooded
Okay,
area.
I wasn't sure, but I've
This
never been
entire
back
area.
here, so I wasn't down there. So I just have a couple of questions for you. How much of the walk that you showed, the whole mile and a half, how much of that will actually be on the river? You showed a mile and a half, is that including parts that would be sidewalk as well, that mile and a half, or is that only the portion of the walk that would be on the river itself?
I understand. What we show on the plan is the desired alignment, which is the ultimate condition if we can get it. Likelihood of getting that is very, very low because of existing conditions, steep slopes, environmental constraints that was mentioned a moment ago. So instead of that, what we try to do in the plan is to show interconnections of where there could be sections of it and or pilot areas of it, realize. And that mile and a half is really to tell you the length of the district, really.
So how
that
much
we
of
looked
the
at.
actual walk on the river? That's
Well,
not
we show
how much.
in the desired pathway the entire frontage, with the exception of where the Sloan Park area
So a mile
is.
and a half of it would be followed where we're not going out to the street and maybe
And a
sidewalks.
desired perfect
So
world
you say
condition.
no chance of that happening? So
Of
what's
the entire length, yes.
What's the more likely length that would be?
I have not actually done that measurement, but if I had to venture to guess, it's probably 50%,
So about 3/4 of a mile.
somewhere around there. Yes.
What would be the longest stretch that would follow the river? Like one continuous longest stretch that would follow the river?
I don't know that.
Yesterday?
I would not do that.
So it's 3/4 of a mile, so it's not going to be 3/4 of a mile, probably not 1/4 of a mile.
Depends if you did a loop.
What would be the shortest stretch? You wouldn't know that either, but I imagine there'd be some very short stretches as well.
Could be. Could be, depends upon what phase you're talking about.
So I also saw that there were sidewalks you had that you envisioned going from the walkway up to sidewalks like parking lots,
Correct.
up to the street on sidewalks. Now, is that something you're going to do as a standard procedure?
It would be something that we could recommend with the planning process.
Well, I've never seen that. I've never actually seen that, so I'm just curious, is that something you normally do, that you've done in other
Yes, there can be access to an adjacent open space or adjacent feature, sure.
going through like a business park?
Sure.
So it would just be like a cement or pavers, whatever, just going through the parking lot into the street?
Not, if you're trying to say it would
I'm
just
just
be...
trying to envision it because I don't
Let me
understand.
finish. Let me finish. If you're trying to say it's a pathway that is not done with any rhyme or reason, I would say no. Because during the planning process, we're trying to place it within the most safe location possible. Also possibly along a common property line. Could two property owners share that same location? Sure. The idea is there, just to provide those interconnections where possible. Are all these locations going to happen? Probably not. But the idea is there.
So I was a little surprised you said that the width of the walk would be 6 feet. That seems very narrow to me.
Because it's a very narrow condition.
So what would be the standard that you would do? You mentioned South River, you mentioned other
by 6 feet is children.
It's pretty narrow. And that's a little bit more than the table's probably 6 feet.
4 feet is a normal sidewalk, so 6 feet allows for 2 people who are jogging past each other.
So 2 people wide. Thank you very much. So I just have a couple of things I'd like to say to the council. I run every day, I walk all the time. I would love a river walk. Nothing would make me happier than to have a place that I could go and run in the mornings and just, it would be wonderful. Love the birds, love nature, love the river. If I could possibly think that this was, I would love to be able to get behind this. I really would. Even if it cost money, I would be happy, like, I'd love a place for me to go. So I do think we have a lot of ball fields for the kids and a lot of places. It'd be nice to have some places for adults. I'd just like to address a couple of things that I heard talked about. Councilman Shortman said that, talked about the ball fields, and I do think we do spend a lot of money on the ball fields, but I think there is a difference because they are an existing entity already. We're not talking about building more ball fields, we're just talking about spending money maintaining something that is already existing. And I think when you have something that already exists and you don't maintain it, then you're just throwing money away, and it's very foolish. So I think that it's just a much different, two different things completely when we're talking about. And if we did have a walk and we needed, we do pay DPW workers out of the Rose Fund, that's fine. But if we did have a walk, then we would probably need to hire maybe another DPW worker. So that would probably cost more money. Let's see how we can do it with that. And the idea of volunteers is very nice. And that may work initially, maybe it would work a long time, I don't know. But if it doesn't work and we don't have DPW doing it and volunteers don't show up, then we have now an asset that's overgrown and unkempt and unsightly. So I think that's something to be considered as well. That's it.
Thank you very much.
So going back to these pictures,
Yes.
the area right by the parking lot, you can't see it. It's a
The
lot
area right by the existing parking lot,
That parking lot that's there, you can't see the river from
you can see portions of it, but
there.
I would
You
agree
can
with you
see
that
it.
I would probably venture to say that's not the most view you'll get.
Right, so the green line is really the optimal.
That is the optimal location, correct?
Right. And then, my dad's on a wheelchair. For wheelchair accessibility, right, for someone on a scooter or things of that sort. The
You see
material
that-
that you're recommending is probably not correct, right? You can get stuff in that.
Certainly, you would, and this is not recommended for handicap access to the parking lot. That could be done in pockets of locations where one person could then have a view of possibly the waterfall area, things of that nature.
Where's the waterfall?
The waterfall you see would be right in here.
Got it. So as you come around, right before the senior center.
Right, in the senior center right now, they have a pathway in this area, and a pathway that actually comes over here. We could develop something at the little sitting area.
But to the southern portion where there's buses, and then you have the exits there.
Over here,
Close
yeah,
to the river.
sort of the objectionable view. Yeah.
Yeah. Right there, I think that's like a 15 to 30 foot drop, right? But we would definitely need fencing.
It depends how close you pull the pathway to that. The pathway is within 6 feet, I'll just say yes, but I don't envision that with this location. I would probably keep people
Further away. And what's there?
Plus, there's some
Trees?
existing fencing in that area. Yeah.
There is.
Yes.
What kind of fence?
It's a 6 foot high chain link.
I have a follow-up question about that, since you mentioned your desirable views, which is there, I've obviously just got this, so is there something in there to mitigate what you label here as undesirable views?
I was
Parts
just,
of the path?
what I would
go
look to
right
do in
past
that
it.
location is not put the path very close to that view. The idea was to have it some distance away from the edge of the stream, using existing vegetation, what have you, is to help filter that view. And you still see it, sure. And if you go out to the parking lot, look close enough, you can see the buses, especially in winter time.
But you're not talking about putting anything additional in front?
No, I would look to try to keep that to a minimum.
Use what's already there.
Exactly.
Okay.
To try to minimize the resource and minimize the effort to maintain the resource as well.
The green's ideal, why did you deviate from the ground?
I deviated because after we went and looked at the study area with Phil Foster's office, we realized that we should probably bring it closer to the parking area because that area was flatter. wasn't as rolly or terrain restricted, as well as there were a lot more trees in that area. I said to myself, you know what, it'd be much easier if we kept it closer to the parking lot, plus net to the senior center, much easier further out. Plus the cost.
There's a cost thing as well.
It would cost more to go further.
Cost estimates of savings.
We just wanted to have that as an idea, a diagrammatic notation for where that way.
Anyone else wishing to? Yes, sir.
Tony Costa, 23 Hillside Drive. I'd like to thank the council for really trying to improve the town, first of all, and think of ways that we could actually attract more people into the town, so I appreciate that. But I think the general consensus has been, even if 50% of this floods, I'd rather take the money that you're going to put in a project like this and mitigate your flood problems downtown for the private residents and for the business owners before you even go through with a plan like this. And I think the general consensus today has been that so far. That's all I was saying.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Bernie Bloom, 183 Reed Avenue. I've been involved with a lot of studies over the years. I sat on his bench for 11 years.
Bernie, just come up with.
Basically, my question is, in your study, there was one major thing that was touched upon, but not really touched upon. When we did the visioning process, we actually looked at parking. Your study not looking for it. And again, if you're anticipating high use, even if it's short-term for 1 or 2 years, with the entire project, this study should have parking plans built into it. Because if they may do this one, and then the other council may say, well, wait a minute, we have this plan that we paid money for. It is part of our 1990 master plan. Okay? Again, when you look at the study, this is an up-to-date study. We're for the anticipated use. So that's something that I think should happen.
Great. No, thanks, Brian. Anyone else wishing to speak to tonight's presentation? Yes, Mrs. DeLazier. Mrs. DeLazier, sir. Come on, Mrs. DeLazier, thank you. How are you?
This is a feasibility study, right? To see if it is feasible to do this.
Correct.
A couple of things that I wanted to mention. We have ball fields for young people. We have hiking spots for those able to hike. And for older people, I think it would be a nice spot. And also people with small children. The other thing is the spot from the Fireman's Hall down to what used to be Borough.
All right.
Needs a sidewalk, in the worst way. Okay?
I agree. So does Union Avenue. So here's it. Thank you.
What's that? So who said that?
No, I said, so does Union Avenue, you decided one.
Well,
As well as what you just
this
said.
is just the one spot.
I
It
agree.
doesn't have one.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Ron has a question on the street. Quick question, did you say that we were going to be pricing this out?
I can provide that price, yes.
Okay, what I would like to see is the additional costs. I know we talked about that, I believe you said that we would probably have to have an insurance rider, that
out. We should be pricing out exactly the yearly cost of the soft material or the mulch and/or what the increased cost of DPW is going to be. Because that's, if it's a mile and a half, are they going to be walking that mile and a half? Or how do they access that to get rid of garbage and maintain that? Because I would like to see not only what this is going to cost, but what that's going to cost us yearly and will impact the taxpayers.
Agreed.
So maybe go through exactly what you think all the additional costs will be to us every single year, and I'd like to see that as a separate item. Thank you.
Anyone else?
A number of years ago, you did a lot of work on Main Street, putting newspapers in, and the idea was that if you do something like this, it's going to bring business to town. It never did. Riverwalk has, I've read about a lot of different towns that have this. It does bring business into the town. And that's going to give us some real revenue. We're not going to have school children or going to school or anything like that. It's just going to help the town. And I don't know why there's such this reluctance to even consider it. I'm talking about the flooding. We bonded $1.8 million to fix the flooding in Sloan Park. And that's what we are anticipating. That's going to take care of all the flooding in that area. So if that's going to be taken care of, I don't even know why that's an issue at this point. It just seems that there's a lot of negativity, and it's very sad that when something is trying to be done to help the town, that people don't want to consider it.
Well, I don't know who said they weren't going to consider it.
I think the audience has more or less been very
Okay,
negative.
well,
I just think that's just inappropriate.
The issue on the $1 million flood mitigation bond will stop flooding on Main Street, but it's not going to stop flooding on the water's still going to come the other side of the gapping walls that are going to go in to stop the car wash from overflowing. It's still going to impact anything on this side. So the Riverwalk, you assume, will be on the river side of those gapping walls. So there's still issue with that. But again, it's a feasibility study. The entire area that floods from Wells Fargo to, obviously, Sloan Park for now, even though it goes further, may not be conducive to run a sidewalk along the river. That may be the section where you come back to Main Street. These are, again, just a feasibility study. So the negativity, that's why we're here, to hear people's opinion. I'll be frank, I'm not hiding my opinion. My opinion is, and I always, this is kind of joking, but there was only 100 things wrong with Bloomingdale. Only, just 100. After we fixed 100 things, the borough was perfect. Then I think you do a river. And I'm being facetious. My point being, we have sidewalk issues, Mrs. DeLasia raises. We have
It's just not the wayside.
Okay, well, we have infrastructure issues, we have utility issues, we have, on and on and on. As Councilman Tomato said, personally, I'd rather see the front of Main Street fixed through economic development, through, as Councilman Schorman was talking about at last meeting, enticing business owners to improve facades and things like that. I'd rather see that first. You have to solve the flooding problem before you put a penny into any sort of riverwalk. You have to. I'm not against this. To do a little park, a little walkway here, that's pretty much a no-brainer. That would beautify that area for not just seniors, for everybody. Right? That's a great idea. Because that really doesn't flood. Anything more than that in where we stand today in Bloomingdale is just not feasible. But having a plan is something we need to start considering.
But something else to consider, John, is that the Laser Field always floods also. And we spend a lot of money every time cleaning that up each time it floods. We just spent a lot of money cleaning lights in Wilkes-Barre, and we also have to pay money to stop the flooding there. But we're willing to do those, take care of that flooding areas, and still spend money for those, but not willing to do the Riverwalk area. I just don't understand.
So as you stated, there's $1 million bond in place to solve flooding on Main Street.
Right.
So that's obviously step one.
Right.
Funding's been in place 2 years, and we haven't even broke ground yet because of the process. The process alone, even if we got to the point where all those things were done, it's time to consider a Riverwalk. Conservatively, I'll say it's been taking 3 to 4 years just to get permits from the DEP to even look at it and think about it. So, again, it's not an easy
I'm not saying,
thing to be done,
but I
you know?
mean, the flooding, the Grand isn't flooding.
If the governing body didn't want it, the
Please
feasibility,
help the town, I can get.
this is why we're here, listen, you know, this is what Ed did his job for, to see the pros and cons. And obviously, would it help downtown? Certainly. But there's a lot of other things that need to be done first. In my opinion, straight in my opinion. Finally, if we were ever to consider this, I, like I think you would agree with, as we did with the lights, would suggest it goes to referendum. And the voters vote whether this is something they want.
Thank you.
May I one more time?
Sure, there's no limit.
Yeah, I know it's a long night.
How do you start?
Oh, I'm sorry. Tom Tracy, 158 Rapkin Road. Bluntly, in my opinion, the flooding problem is never going to be resolved. It's been, like I probably said before, it's been worked on for how many years? I've lived in this town for long enough to know, I don't care who works on it, but the river is going to continue to be flooded.
If I may stop just for a second?
Yes, John, man.
We will stop the flooding on Main Street.
Thank you.
The flooding. How? The flooding.
How?
The flooding that breaches at the Wells Fargo Bank
Yeah,
and the car wash,
yeah.
that, and the Sloan Park sidewalk, that ultimately breaches our Main Street, floods the side streets of Leary, Reeve, Ryerson,
Yeah.
that can be stopped.
No way.
Yes, it can. Okay. It can. We're from the DEP now, with 2 years of planning, up to 15 permits, a lot of money in hydrological studies. We are bringing the riverbank back to its original height. And we've actually, because the park will always be flooded. Sloan Park will forevermore go underwater when we get these, let me finish. And as a result of that, if you look at the park, the water naturally wants to go through the park. So it has cut a pathway through the park. That culvert is going to remain as part of the design with riprap to take this water. It actually has lowered the floodplain by 1 foot in that area. So when we are done with the Sloan Park improvement and the Main Street improvement, our Main Street will be dry. The animal shelter will flood forever. The park will flood forever. So I'm not talking about Riverwalk. You were like, it's never going to be fixed.
Actually, I was talking about Riverwalk.
No, okay, but you said flooding's never going to stop. It is going to stop. Our Main Street flooding is going to be contained within the riverbanks.
But now, if we want to get back to the Riverwalk,
Yeah.
maybe I should have said, it's going to continue to get flooded. It's going to get washed away.
If you put a river walk on the
That's
side of
my-
those sections of the river,
It's going to get washed
it'll
away.
get washed away.
That's why, again, to the council, to everybody here, I don't want to see money thrown down someplace. Okay, I've said it like 2
But
times
if you can
tonight.
actually, and I'm not, again, I'm not pro river walk today. Just being honest with you. It's in theory a great idea for our downtown. It's just, there's other things that I stated before. If you can do these gaining walls to stop the flooding, and actually do a walkway on the Main Street side,
It's not going to happen. It's going to continue to flood and get washed away.
in certain sections,
Sorry,
yes.
And you know what, John, I'm sorry, but even what you just said before about the studies that you're going to make, I'm sorry, but I believe that Main Street and everything else down, it's going to continue to get flooded. And things will get washed away.
I'm not disagreeing with you on the river walk along the riverbank in those areas will get washed away. But I will look you straight in the face and say, when we're done with our flood mitigation project, Main Street will be dry.
I don't think so, John.
And then I will shake your hand and have a gentleman's bet.
No way. No way. No way. John, I'll tell you why. Because I've been hearing this, okay.
No, okay, you've been hearing it, but nothing's ever been done about it. In your 30 years in Bloomingdale, tell me 40 years in Bloomingdale, what's been done about it? Nothing.
Okay.
There's a difference, it's a big difference.
I remember this town getting flooded something awful in 1973. And then blah, 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 blah. You know what, John? You made a very good point. What have I seen done? Nothing. So I'll stand down and tell you. Okay, help me now. So, you know what? Now here's a funny story. My father stood here back in 1972, and he said to the mayors, "What in the world are you doing about flooding around here?" And my father got lost. Nothing has been done since 1972.
Because now it's getting done.
I hope it is, that's great. Okay, but that's the flooding issue. That's great. But I'm just telling you, okay, flooding, I'm still going to say, you're not going to be able to control that, okay? It's not going to happen. I think this is just something that it's going to have to be done with. But the Riverwalk, sorry, I'm completely, to every person on the council, completely against it. It's going to get, we're going to be losing, the money's going to be just flush right down. Thank you, more time. Again, don't be- Anyone else?
No. Seeing no, we didn't even know if this meeting would have a motion for public comment, so I'm going to thank Ed. Wasn't too painful, Ed. Hold on. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I thought you had a turn at the beginning. You have such a
I have lots of
beautiful
turns, you know
story.
that. You're generous with your
Okay.
turns. I think my question probably is for our engineer, Mr. Barati. I think Mrs. Oldfield got up and said something about if the businesses can't develop, why should we develop? Or we're going to lose businesses, we're trying to be business friendly. But isn't it the case that no one can build 300 feet, is it, from a river? What, I mean, it has nothing to do with the river walk, but if you're talking about trying to bring, you know, some economics to our town and to build businesses, this is not, they can't build within the river, am I correct?
Tom Barati from Darmokowski
Yeah, we were
Engineering.
playing them by the word, and we were doing well.
Yeah, we were almost out of here. The opportunity for businesses to construct buildings along the river is pretty much not going to happen.
Okay, and in your experience, because I know, what John
Is that
said
what you're
is
asking?
true.
Whether
Yes,
a
yes.
private owner can
They
build
are
a
not
building?
going to build, and we're not going to develop our
They're not gonna allow
downtown business area in the path of 300, is it 300 feet?
There's a 300-foot riparian buffer along the Quantic River because it's Category 1 water.
Yes.
Correct. But there is opportunity to redevelop in areas that are already disturbed. There's a lot of properties that have parking areas,
Right.
and those areas could be redeveloped to construct a rain garden, for instance. You know, perhaps improve some of the water quality for some of the smaller storms. So could somebody do that privately? Yes. Any one of the, you know, restaurants or businesses could go in and remove a little bit of asphalt and put a rain garden in or a little landscaped area. And that would be done by permit by rule from the Flood Hazard Area Act. You know, you wouldn't even really need a permit for it. So those are things that can be done. If they want to go in and put a building, it's not going to happen. If they want to expand their parking, it's a really difficult permit to get. They don't want you to increase your impervious. But if you want to redevelop areas that are already disturbed, you can.
Do you have any experience with permits for something like a river walk that is not
The permit process will take a couple of years. There may be some wetlands permits, and there may be some flood hazard area permits, or just jurisdictional determinations. In some areas, yes. In some areas, no. The pilot study is out of the flood hazard area, so the opportunity to develop that is pretty straightforward. But some sections that are closer to the river and near some wetlands transition areas would be a little bit more difficult, might require some permits.
I'm thinking 2 years to get permits for so long.
It's going to take many months.
They're doing a lot of work in slow work, though. I think it's good work, but still,
Not
it's a long time.
grand scheme of things, this is less than 600 feet.
I mean, obviously, something like this would be done with the cooperation of the local businesses and residents. It would be a cooperative effort, not a way to limit developers' opportunity to use their property. We're not looking to take away anything from owners. We're looking to work together with owners. Now, some of the restaurants might like an outdoor seating area, with some landscaping. It's a cooperative thing.
And don't forget, Governor Biden, the public, there's a planning board process too. This plan is become part of, specific plan, part of our master plan. The planning board touches, hears public comment, and their own input, so a lot to be done.
Thank you very much.
So thank you, Tom. Sure. Okay, Tom.
One
Councilman.
last thing, Mr. Mayor, I just want to echo what Councilman Romano said. This plan, okay, if it went on the green area, if it was on the optimal that, that has presented, maybe sections of it you should compare to the Ridgewoods and the Saddle Rivers, but having a 2-inch path of gravel or wood chips, and the vision of, it would be wonderful to have a river walk compared to what Butler has built with nice pavers and a nice metal fence, and potentially lights there and having families go there. 2 inches of gravel and that vision are not the same, okay? Spending $30,000 to get to this point, to then spend another $50,000 to put 2 inches of gravel, I could have done that for zero. I could have done that for bags and mulch from Home Depot. We didn't need to spend $80,000 to get to this point. Okay, so the visions and your concern was, that some of us were concerned about the total cost, because we see it, we want this town to be better than your Ridgewoods and your Saddle Rivers. And we want everything that we're going to do to be the optimal, and that would cost us millions. And to the mayor's point, that would not come up until we solve all other problems. So, to me, the concept of Riverwalk is a wonderful concept, and I wish we had the money to do it. But this year, to go spend $58,000 on top of the $30,000, I echo what the residents have said. Mr. Lee.
Ed, I thank you. You spent $10 million. Oh, we're not done yet. I'm sorry, Councilman Conklin, did you have a question?
No, just maybe comment.
Oh, Ed? Wasn't that big?
No, not too bad. I sound like integrity.
Oh, that's you asked.
What you asked.
Thank you for being here, and I'll see you soon for our Highland Adventures.
Yes.
So, Tom, thank you.
You're welcome.
Take a 5-minute recess so Ed can pack up, and we'll return momentarily.
One lady was so cute, she had us come in the house because the door might be still out.
Okay, we shall resume at 9:03. Motion to open for early public comment.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone wishing to speak to an agenda item, please come up, state your name and address for the record. Seeing no one, motion to close.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, reports, Dean, you have anything for us?
No, just as a reminder, tomorrow evening, the clerk's office will be open until 9 p.m. The last day to register to vote for the special general election on October 16th.
Thank you. Tracy, do you have anything for us? Any council person have liaison committee report?
I went to the rec last night, and I proposed the beautification idea to them. They were all for, they thought it was a great idea, they just thought it wasn't in their jurisdiction to run the judges. They thought it'd behoove them to ask the seniors to possibly get involved with that.
Senior advisory committee? Okay. Well, Linda, you can bring it back to them as a concept, and
Maybe we, again, just, maybe there's a couple of council people on the committee, pick a couple of places that they recommend, and the seniors go down to the judge, which one is each one.
well, again, I think we'll bring it to committee, decide how we want to do it. Seniors, rec, first we have to notify business owners, exactly rules, and, just, it's an early concept. But
Yeah.
Thank you for doing
There's
that.
also residents as well, they said they agree.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else?
I have two matters, one for the Board of Education, one of which is a resolution to be hopefully introduced later. The other is, I didn't see it on the mayor's report, I wanted to bring up the busing issue that's currently going on. Now we've had to refer to the traffic bureau.
Right. When Just speak up a little bit.
I'm sorry. There was a slight change in the bus route on Acton Road, which is concerned several parents. It was brought up in the last Board of Education meeting last week. An attempt to get a firm resolution on how that should be handled. It was referred to our traffic bureau to see what their recommendation was in terms of safety for the children and anyone else involved. So hopefully we'll be getting reports very soon from that.
Yeah, well, the chief just returned today, so he'll have something for me hopefully by the end of the week. Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Just like Municipal Drug Alliance has their coin toss this week as part of Pride Day, or in conjunction with Pride Day. I copied everyone on my mayor's report, just a couple items. Our best practice report is due by October 15th. I'll have it for your review by the end of this week. I won't take action, although it just needs consent to the governing body. Actually, it really doesn't, but I will ask for consent to the governing body. And for your input, you'll have that best practice, which is a report card that Governor Christie put in place. We're scoring very well. I'm in the process of reviewing with our credit card company, adding credit cards to our court office. Our court administrator feels that will help in our collections. Tonight's agenda is extending Finland's construction shared service. Contract actually expires September 30th, but it hasn't paid through the end of the year, so we're just going to extend tonight to 12/31/13, and then I'll present a renewal in December for January. So we're just going to extend current term to the end of the year, so now it's an annual January to January contract. I'm in the process of doing an audit with PSE&G on all our furnaces and air conditionings for efficiency. They have a program that if they could save you X enough in your usage to pay for the equipment, at the end of the day, you get new equipment and there's no increased cost to you whatsoever. So I'm in the process of doing that. Paving, as you can all see, we are almost concluded with our 2013 paving. Sophia, Lakeside, Old Ridge, Woodward, Hillside, 3rd Street, Ryerson, Hamilton, and Orchard and Boston. Those are repairs from prior utility work. Red Twig, Star Lake intersection, Reeve Oak intersection, Jeffries, Knowles, the County, Union, Glenwell, and Mackin have all been paved, and it's a great thing, so we're excited about that. All our drainage issues on Glenwell have been resolved. We've had a few, and the county also, before paving, had done that. They still have to pave Glenwell from Hamburg to Crane, and that should be in the next week and a half to 2 weeks. Did you have a question?
I was wondering, on our list, we had Clark Street. Is that on our list? Is there anything left in the town?
There are some odds and ends, including the Borough Hall parking lot here. And once I have all my tonnage in, and we'll see what's left, and I believe we're under budget, then we may go back and revisit some of the other items on the list.
What streets were left from the roads to be paved list? I just saw Clark.
Just Clark.
What part?
And then I added Mary Street, I added a few, but it all depends on the funding.
Which part of Clark are you talking
Clark, or no, from, well, as much as you can get, you know, it
Just that
depends.
Clark Street.
I think the whole thing, to do the entire park, I think was like $78,000. I think when we're done, we only have about 48,000, so I think half of it.
So it would be the lower end?
It would be the lower end. From Sunrise to, you're saying, what's the lower end?
Star Lake?
Lake.
Sunrise.
Sunrise to Star Lake, or Sunrise to the Walter T. Bird?
Sunrise towards Walter T. Bird.
Yeah. So the worst is actually right at Sun intersection with Sunrise.
The upper end is pretty good, right? Out Labor House?
Yeah, some patching up there, but
Yeah, right.
that's why it's surprising when you
But
say
at that
Clark.
intersection of Walter Drive and Clark to Star Lake is in rough shape. So again, that's just,
One lane's good.
Well, the intersection, Walter and Clark, but you're talking the lower end where Clark Street's one way?
correct.
That was just done a few years ago.
Have you seen the condition of it?
I have since the beginning, since it was paved, and if you're gonna have that done, have them grade it the right way so the water drains and doesn't freeze over it. It should have been done by engineering 10 years ago.
If it's going to be done at all this year. And once I know that, then I can finish my 10-year plan on that. I'm still waiting on the Delazier Grandson Award letter. I spoke to the county, should have that by October 15th, so then we can try to find any place to try to award that over the winter for an early spring build-out. We We're hiring DPW employee Michael Grosso, who's replacing our employee who has left. We received 178 applications, interviewed over 20, and this gentleman will be joining forces very soon. The backhoe and new mason dump came in this week. Pride Day reminder and 5K run this Saturday. John, 5K run, I'll defer to you.
The 5K race is Saturday. We visited all the homes, the fire department visited all the homes on the route last night, dropping off letters that roads will be closed. The roads will be closed approximately 10 o'clock in the morning, and as the race proceeds, we have a group of guys behind them that will open the roads right away. So they will be closed probably for, say, a good 2.5 hours. But every resident that has a problem getting out, we said we would work with them. So to make sure people had to go to work or whatever, we would get them out of their homes. But for the 5K, the response is fantastic. We are over 250 participants, which we expected. Our goal was to get to 200. We're over that. We expect to be at 300 when we're done, with people actually participating, walking, running, whatever we decide to do. We have the other local fire departments helping us. The police department is co-sponsored this with the fire department, doing an outstanding job. Joey was good, Mark Gildersleeve. They've been working on the traffic end of it, so there is no interruption for the local residents around that have to get around the town while this is all going on. This 5K race, I think, is the first time it's ever been done in this town, and the response is absolutely tremendous. The support for Bob Koska has been great. So, and I know his family really appreciates what's going on. The Facebook stuff, phone calls, letters, whatever. So, and they will participate because they're going to be there for the whole thing. So it's really nice to see the community come together for this event to honor a great guy.
And the finish line is at the Leisure Field,
Yes.
which will also be the kickoff of Pride Day when we announce awards and winners and things like that.
Yes. So the two events merged together should be a really nice day. The weather's supposed to be beautiful.
Knock on wood.
Should be nice.
Thank you very much. The DPW generators will be installed by next week. There's a new DEP flood mitigation desnagging grant, $3 million. The DEP has just put out. We'll be applying for additional desnagging. I want to do more desnagging by the Glacier and Open Lake. It'll help, offset some of our own bonding money for mitigation as well. And finally, all health insurance. We changed our plan. Renewals in January. We've done all the open enrollment forms for October, and I've informed and reached out to all employees on the new opt-out information. That's an annual sign-off. Employees are signing off whether they're opting in or out, and detailing the new features we put in place on following state statute now. For an opt-out employee, it gets $5,000 versus the past 50%. So everyone's on board, and that's been completed for our October enrollment. So something else right there. One other thing is mulch report. We are doing our last delivery on September 19th. Was our last mulch and topsoil delivery. We've done a total of 59 deliveries since April for a total revenue of $2,950 for the first time. And again, that'll only grow next year, so I'm giving you an update on that. 59 deliveries, $2,950 for topsoil and mulch. But we have concluded on the 19th, simply because leaf season is approaching, and we need all hands on deck for leaf pickup. Okay, anyone else have anything? I need a motion to approve the consent agenda, which is the minutes for July 23rd, August 20th meetings. Who makes that motion?
Just have the very first page, as in attendance, Mayor Dunleavy, and absent Mayor Dunleavy.
So I was here in that regard. Actually, I won that game. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Pending business, one item. This is the second final reading in public hearing on ordinance 29, 2013, amendment to chapter 92 of our code and zoning. Again, we are simply, we've already approved the codification of chapter 92. This is just simply identifying that process of codifying the code by ordinance. So public notice statement, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this ordinance was posted in the municipal building, published in the Herald News, copies of all to the copies of the motion, if made and read by title.
And who makes that motion?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
An ordinance of the Borough of Bloomingdale, the County of Passaic, State of New Jersey, to amend Chapter 92 of the Code of the Borough of Bloomingdale zoning.
Thank you. And I need a motion to open public comment.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Anyone wishing to speak to 2019-2013, please come up and state your name and address for the record.
Alan Gunderson, 169 Clark Street, Bloomingdale. I want to thank this council for finally getting to the point where Chapter 92 is going to finally be codified and no longer be 10,000 individual pages of slop that we dealt with for, well, the 21 years that I was on the planning board. So congratulations. Once this is done, there's still Chapter 69, just so you know. There's another bit to still do, land use, but getting there. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, if I may, Al Gunderson and Bill Graff is here and Bill Steischer is here. Thank you guys for part of the committee who put a lot of hours and time into getting us to this point. So it was really your efforts that are allowing us to do this tonight. So thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to 2019-2013? Seeing no one, motion to close. All in favor?
Aye.
And now who moves to adopt? Any discussion? Roll call.
Councilmembers Compton.
Yes.
Tomato.
Yes.
Delariva.
Yes.
Short.
Yes.
Sandemeyer.
Yes.
Yazdi.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, this will go on much.
Yes. Ready to go. Thank you. Okay, new business, 12A, adoption resolution 2013 9.4, paying the bills. Who makes that motion?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion?
Yes, I'm going to state once again, as I have in the past, that I really don't approve of paying for expenses for catering at meetings, so I'll be voting no on the bills.
Any other discussion?
Just one question, Karen.
Sure.
Briar Warner Fleet, 5,500.
Mason dump.
That's not the Borough Department, that's the other one?
That's the brand new Mason dump for the DPW.
The DPW, not the Borough.
The other one hasn't come in, quite more like Christmas. Thank you. Anyone else?
My question is the Barrett bills. Lakewood, Starlight, who are they for?
Sorry?
Barrett, John Barrett, Lakewood, Glenwell Repairs, Starlight. Do you know what they
Yeah,
were?
well, Starlink was a damaged curb box that assisted our sewer and water. And then we had, during the real large thunderstorm a few weeks ago or so, we actually had half the town was without water. And Rocco was away, and Frankie was working in the fire department. So Barrett was the first to arrive and see, figure out what it ended up being. It ended up being our float valve got stuck. What's that?
That's what we got to
It didn't empty the tank. It read as though the tank was empty, so it shut the water down. Long story short, it was resolved. But again, in comparison to the past, we're still using Barrett when the need arises, but the overall costs are a fraction of where they were. Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, my other question is, I think I'll wait on that, so.
Okay. Roll call.
Councilmember Tomato.
Yes.
Delariva.
Yes.
Short.
No.
Sandemeyer.
Yes.
Yazdi.
Yes.
Compton.
Okay, item B, authorization for use of right-of-way for 42 Morse Lakes Road, Maryland, CLD Block 86, over on Lot 10. This is an individual who needs to cross over a borough right-of-way to access a second driveway. It's been this way for 40 years. I just feel it's important to memorialize it, document it, have an agreement, holding us harmless, and obviously continue to allow the use versus not acknowledging it, and then that could lead into problems down the road. So we're acknowledging it and allowing use, which we have done in the past. So who makes that motion?
So moved.
Second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilmembers Delariva.
Yes.
Short.
Yes.
Sandemeyer.
Yes.
Yazdi.
Yes.
Compton.
Yes.
Tomato.
Yes.
Item C, introduction by title of ordinance 30, 2013, amending parking ordinance in front of 101 and 107 Amber Turnpike. This is, you can see the lines and signs have been put up. We need to make it an ordinance to make it law. The Traffic Bureau has, for years, I'm told, and it's just something that makes perfect sense, has been trying to have no parking in front of the construction office and leaving about half of the front of Borough Hall because as you exit, and it's mostly police cars who are exiting that driveway, there's a blind spot created when cars are parked there. So the ordinance will prohibit parking in that square yellow line area you see, but allow 15-minute drop-off in the other half of the front of Borough Hall. Doesn't create a blind spot, but it's 15 minutes for residents to drop books, mail, mailboxes there, particularly UPS and FedEx who drop and go. And hopefully it'll push people to park in the fire hall or behind Borough Hall when they're here for any length of time to prevent that hazard. So that's what we're doing. And, I'm sorry. Motion to introduce. Motion to introduce, please. So moved. Who's the second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
And that will be for October 8th at 7:30 and 7:05.
Yes, thank you. Okay, introduction resolution 2013 9.5, canceling, that's the right terminology, canceling bond ordinance.
The resolution, I guess, which changes and canceling grants for completed and.
Right, canceling, what we're doing is just cleaning up bookkeeping. It's not canceling bonds, it's canceling up old grants. For example, let me go to the resolution. The resolution identifies exactly the grants you're referring to. All we're doing, this is not an expense to the borough, we're just wiping it off the books. So, the biggest one on here is the Green Acres grant that we have for the lights. $410,552 was the amount on the books. Now, there was no money offsetting that. We didn't get the money from Green Acres, but it sat on our books looking like a liability. So, for example, last year we had $400,000 in surplus. Okay, but then you had these liabilities on the opposite side of the balance sheet showing as an obligation. So we're cleaning that out. So, because they're just protecting our surplus or ability to access surplus. And you can see body armor grant 1,600, municipal alliance accumulation over 10 years, Green Acres planning grant, which is the lights, liquor ticket grant $54, safe routes to school, and we never got the funding, but these are on the balance sheet. So we're zeroing these out, cleaning the books. So who introduces that resolution, please?
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Shortman.
Yes.
Sondemire.
Yes.
Yazdi.
Yes.
Conklin.
Yes.
Tomato.
Yes.
Hilton.
Yes. Thank you. Good. Okay, next is introduction of an ordinance number 31, 2013, an ordinance appropriating $34,395 to provide for the purchase of emergency communication system for the police department. Now, we need to do this ordinance to appropriate $34,000. And I just want to state on the record that this amount of money is not new debt to the borough. This amount has been offset by an anonymous donation to the borough for police communication. And that's where we'll leave it. And I need a motion, please.
Second.
And any discussion?
Yes, I see on the capital projects to be done from the canceled fund, this was radios, is this what it is,
Yes.
radios?
Correct.
But that amount was only 15,000.
Because the board of ed was funding some, we were reaching out for other donated sources. So now we have this donated source. Okay. So I'm sorry. Second final reading, I'm sorry, but we didn't vote on the introduction. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Sondemire.
Yes.
Yazdi.
Yes.
Conklin.
Yes.
Tomato.
Yes.
Hilton.
Yes.
Shortman.
Yes.
Second and final again, Jane.
October 8th, 7:30.
Item F, authorization for an executive session October 22nd, 2013 at 6 p.m. for attorney-client matter. The governing body to authorize me to advertise this early executive at 6 p.m. Please mark the calendars, October 22nd. Who makes that motion?
Second.
All in favor?
October 22nd.
October 22nd. Just wanted to know, 6 o'clock, yeah, I want to do it before the regular meeting. Okay, adoption of resolution 2013 9.6 through 9.8. These are tax overpayments authorizing, as you can see on your agenda. Someone makes that motion?
Second.
Any discussion?
This is like a resident facing launch,
Yeah, okay.
so we just credit them back and then next quarter they owe us again?
Well, you can see,
Do we pay them or do we wait until the following quarter?
well, no, these would be paid in full. They're not,
These are paid in
yeah,
full?
right.
All right, because the other way,
Right.
oh, just so them know, right.
There's a balance, I'm not getting money back. These are refunds. They're overpaid. Yeah.
All right, what's the credit for the following year?
No.
You can't go over.
Did we need roll call? Roll call, please.
Councilman Field.
Yes.
Cochran.
Yes.
Tomato.
Yes.
Delariva.
Yes.
Shortman.
Yes.
Sondemire.
Okay, item H, adoption of resolution 2013 9.9, extending construction insurance service agreement with Kinnelon until December 31st, 2013. Who makes that motion?
So moved.
Have a second? Any discussion? Just to clarify, the contract expires September 30th, but the payment was arranged annually through 12/31, so we're just going to extend it to that time frame and begin a new one in January. Roll call, please.
Councilmembers Conklin.
Yes.
Tomato.
Yes.
Delariva.
Yes.
Shortman.
Yes.
Sondemire.
Yes.
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 Thank you. I need a motion to open late public comment. All in favor? Anyone wishing to speak, please come up, state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. Jack Bull, Reback. Question for you, brought up about that bond money. Did we apply for that permit, or for that grant for money that's out there?
Not yet, no, I just got the notice this week.
Okay, we're gonna though,
Yes, sir.
before November 30th. That's when you have till, right?
Correct.
Okay, we're gonna do that.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, but it's not going to have anything to do with Sloan Park. It's going to go for additional de-snagging. Oakwood
Whatever.
Lake, yeah, Oakwood Lake
Whatever.
area, the leisure area.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I'm sorry. Anyone else? Seeing no one, motion to close?
So,
All in favor? All right, we'll be going to, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm excited. It's 9:30.
No, I don't see no others.
Non-agenda items. To take action, I remember earlier in the meeting, I mentioned the Board of Ed resolution and our senior resignation, senior member. So, I need a motion, and during discussion, I'll defer to Rich to explain it. A motion to approve resolution 2013 9.10. A resolution, I don't know, I'm going to read the information. Resolution by the Borough of Bloomingdale objecting to the state's mandate that retired superintendents only serve as an interim superintendent for a period of up to 2 years. I'll have Rich explain in a little more detail. Who makes that motion supporting this resolution? Councilman Yazdi, you've got a second by Rich Delariva. And any discussion?
Yeah, I just wanted to explain, this is a partner resolution to a resolution the Board of Education made last week at their meeting. Basically, the circumstances are, I'm not sure when the original statute was in place, but it's been status for a while that a retired superintendent can come back and be an interim superintendent for up to 2 years. Otherwise, somehow it affects pension and stuff like that. But what has happened in the meantime is that, as stated in the resolution a couple of years ago, there were caps put on superintendent's pay in New Jersey. And the end result has been is that a lot of superintendents, rather than taking the pay cut, have either retired or relocated to other states that don't have those caps. Therefore, the pool of regular superintendents, if you will, non-retired superintendents, has dwindled. And as a smaller school district, we find it difficult to, Bloomingdale can't really afford to pay, our current superintendent is an interim superintendent. Therefore, certain benefits such as healthcare and pension is already being handled because he's retired. So it's a cost savings to the taxpayers to have, a retired superintendent come back as an interim superintendent. However, the 2-year limitation is still in effect. So we're caught at cross purposes as a school district. So this is merely a request to the state to look at this again because, like I said, they put the caps in since they originally put in the 2-year time limit. So, I'm not really ever sure where these resolutions actually go after they arrive on someone's desk. But we at least want to say, well, we have a really good interim superintendent here. We'd really like to keep him for more than 2 years.
And hopefully saving.
Yeah, saving you money. I mean, you can't be having a good person working at a cost savings. So why wouldn't you want to keep that?
Once, because of the law, he has to leave.
He has to leave.
We either have to hire another intern, may not be as good.
Right.
Or that's twice as well. Or go full-time.
Exactly.
Twice the same. Okay, thank you.
Right, because you have to pay the full-time fee, and then you're paying, once again, insurance and pension.
They work 3 days a week, takes them days to figure things out, and then they gotta leave after a year.
Right, exactly.
Makes no sense.
Okay, so roll call, please.
Councilmembers Demotta.
Yeah.
Delriva.
Yes.
Sherman. Yes. Sondemire.
Yes.
Yasi.
Yeah.
Khan.
And the other item is I need a motion to accept the resignation of Eleanor Crackle, the mayor's rep to the senior advisory. And Councilman Short will be reaching out to the senior community through the center to see if anyone is willing to fill that seat. Who makes that motion?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Okay. We will be entering executive session at 9:32. We have one matter of negotiation, 2 matters of attorney-client privilege. We have meeting, work session October 8th, and a regular meeting October 20th. Friday, Friday, it's going to be a great weekend. Madam Executive at 10:29. Hey, you'd be at, it would be 9 p.m.
Please.
Motion to come out? Second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, so. Back on the records at 10:29. And I'm sorry, Rich.
I was using to bring up the
Oh, right.
Last night, there was a JV game at Navy Field. I took the liberty of doing some sound checks while that was happening. It maxed out at about 74 decibels at the stands that are across from the announcing booth. So, and obviously that's well within the town's calculation. So,
Decibels are well under the requirements of the ordinance.
These people live on Walls, right?
Further than that. What makes me the most average after all this? All right, I need a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
second.